David, thank you for joining us this afternoon to talk about the FanLed review and Lincoln City's approaches to it. Perhaps you can start off by telling people what the FanLed review is.
Hi, Luke. Yeah, indeed. I mean, it's a very important piece of work that I'm sure fans have heard something about. It's actually basically about reform, how we reform football. And it began in November 21, so it's actually a year old. The key focus is about modernising football's governance, making it fairer and stronger at every level. How we make clubs sustainable, and we've seen lots of examples of clubs getting into trouble, so that's a really important component. And finally, I think one of the key things is how we really formalise the fans' role in being stakeholders in the club. So the report came out, and in April 22, it was accepted by the government and they supported all the strategic recommendations, and it has cross-party support. So there's a very good chance it will move forward into law by a white paper that is about to be released, hopefully by the end of January.
So we've seen these recommendations. We as a club are very much aligned with them. Why do we feel like these are changes that the football needs?
Yes, I think there's broad support for the changes across football clubs, but it's not universal. It's not supported by everyone. There are some clubs who would like to go in a different direction, as we know. So, we can't be complacent about that. But we basically, support them on the basis that the strategic recommendations, we believe, are all sensible. They're all implementable, and they will actually make real change. So, for instance, we support the appointment of an independent regulator. We do think that football can't govern itself and it needs help. So we support that strategic recommendation. We believe that football needs stronger financial regulation for sustainability. It is very, it's a very unique business proposition, football, really. And, it's a competition, and people do make big bets to try and win that competition. But also that leaves clubs open to, obviously, some bad actors, and it leaves clubs open to overstretching themselves. So, we really think it's prudent that there is that kind of financial regulation. We support the new owners and directors test. Again, football clubs, we can see what happens when they're managed or mismanaged by people who don't have the right intentions, so to speak. So we support that. Stronger corporate governance. We support the improvement of equality, diversity, and inclusion in football clubs and in fan groups, etc. And definitely another key strategic recommendation, which was accepted by the government, was basically that fans are properly consulted, particularly in the area of heritage items, stadium, not being able to sell the stadium, not being able to change the name of the club, not being able to change the badge, not being able to change the club colours. Football clubs are part of the community, so it's really important those things are protected. So we support that. And there's a recommendation to implement a shadow board that's made up of fans, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a moment or two. Yes, we support fairer distribution of finances within football. We think that we we think the pyramid's unique, and we think that we help develop players to go on and perform at the highest level. We've got some examples in recent years where we've taken young players on loan from clubs and helped them develop and move on to the next step, and that ultimately generates wealth in the football. So we believe that we should, kind of have a share of that as well. So those kind of things are also recommendations around women's football being treated with parity, which we support. and also indeed the welfare of players exiting the game. So there's a lot in there, 10 strategic recommendations. We have some questions about the detail within those, but we fundamentally support the principles of each and every one. It's just about implementing them, really.
And obviously there's still an ongoing process, still waiting for the white paper from the government, but
yes.
What is the city doing as a club now to prepare for these changes and to implement the recommendations?
Yeah. As I said, the review is a year old, so it's moving at quite a slow pace, but we're expecting the white paper, which will be to formalise what is going to be put then into law. We're expecting the white paper by the end of this, and we want to be ready for that. We know that there's going to be not just recommendations, but mandatories, things we have to do. So we have a good sight of those. We're expecting to see them in the white paper. And we've basically started to work towards implementing those or being prepared to implement them. I think we created a working party made up of fan representatives, the supporters board as it is today, one or two other individuals, again, from the fan base. We reached out to the fan base to invite people to join this working group. Obviously, the trust are represented within that. And then I represent the club and report back to the board as a member of the working group. And to ensure that we have objectivity, we have an independent facilitator who works with us to, basically challenge us, keep us on task, so to speak, and that's what we're doing at the moment. The things that working group are focused on is one, making sure we do represent the fans, and again, this kind of equality and diversity and inclusion piece, making sure that there are voices for people within that working group from all parts of the fan base, because we're quite a broad church, and basically understanding these recommendations and mandatories, making sure we really understand what they mean. And two of the biggest ones, obviously, are the supporters board moving to a shadow board, number one, and number two, to protect the club's heritage. As we said, there'll be something called a golden share, which will be held by an entity, and we're working out where that best sits, who that best sits with, so that golden share can be used to approve or veto decisions or proposals on some of those key heritage items. So we're doing all those kind of things, and some really kind of good discussions, and also challenging ourselves to see how fit we are currently, because we do a lot of good things, Luke. We're in a good position. I think one of the reasons that we really do support many of the recommendations is because we're aligned to them in our values and in the way we think, but also because we're already doing some of them. So again, for us, it's kind of building on the good things we're doing, but making sure that in future we can show that we're aligned to them and we're acting on them.
So this is obviously an ongoing process. What are the next steps for Lincoln City as a football?
Yep, it is ongoing, and it's not going to be quick. I think it's important to say, and everybody understands that it will continue to go fairly slowly. We're not looking at the independent regulator, the appointment of that, and drawing up the detail of how that independent regulator will govern will take time. So that's the first thing. But what we're doing is we are assessing ourselves against those mandatories in how we behave now, and and how we operate now, and what would we need to change in our processes, in our composition of people involved, to be compliant from day one, whenever it goes live. That's what we're working on. So, for instance, it's some good work done by the current group and the supporters board members to actually say, a shadow board will look like this. we think, in future based on the paper that's been released? And are we compliant today using a green, amber, red traffic light system? And where we are, we say tick. Where we're not, we say basically what will it take for us to get there and how can we do that? And we're using that same process for looking at who should hold the golden share as an entity. And there are some very specific criteria around who should hold a golden share, what kind of entity that is. It has to be a community kind of a community benefit organization. And we're looking at the trust, the Red Imps Community Trust in that sense, to see how do we measure against what we expect the mandatories and recommendations to be for that entity now. And where we aren't compliant, we say, what do we have to do to change? What are the things we need to do? So that's two of the really important pieces of work that we're working on now. We have a next meeting. We've had 2 meetings of this FanLed Review Working Group. We've got another one before the Cambridge game on the 28th of January. And we'll be continuing to work through those things. And when the white paper comes out, we'll be going into implementation mode, and then we'll be going into further communications about how we're going to change.